All right, welcome. Today we're jumping into one of the most powerful, world-changing forces ever, the rise of nationalism in 19th century Europe. And believe me, it's a wild story of art, revolution, massive wars, and the very idea of what it means to belong somewhere. You might think a story like this would start on a battlefield, right? With a bang. But nope, it actually begins in an artist's studio with this beautiful, utopian vision of what the world could be. A dream of freedom and brotherhood that would end up lighting a fire across an entire continent.
So who was this artist? He was a Frenchman named Frédéric Soriot, and in 1848, which you gotta remember was a year of crazy revolutions all across Europe, he created this print series that imagined a world made up of democratic, united republics, all just living in peace.
Okay, let's break this down, because this one image is just jam-packed with symbolism. What you're seeing isn't kings or emperors, it's the people of the world, all marching together. They're walking past the Statue of Liberty, who's holding the torch of enlightenment. And look on the ground. Those are the shattered chains of absolute monarchy. Each group has its own flag, its own identity, but they're all part of this one big human family. It was a really beautiful, idealistic way to kick things off.
So this powerful idea of the nation, where did it even come from? To really get the revolutions that came next, we first have to wrap our heads around the core concept that was driving every bit of it.
Before the 19th century, this idea of a nation-state as we know it, well, it barely existed. Europe was this patchwork of huge, multinational empires run by royal families. The idea that the people themselves, sharing a culture, a history, should be the ones in charge, that was absolutely revolutionary.
But a nation is way more than just a dictionary definition. The philosopher Ernst Renan put it beautifully. He said it's not about race or language, but about a spiritual choice, a daily plebiscite. It's like you're voting every single day to live together. It's an active, ongoing commitment based on a shared past and a hope for the future.
In the first place, this whole idea just exploded onto the scene: France. It all kicks off in 1789. The revolution literally rips power away from the king and hands it to the people. And all of a sudden, you get these new ideas, like subjects becoming citizens, le citoyen, and the kingdom becoming the fatherland, la patrie. And then come the symbols, like the tricolor flag kicking the old royal flag to the curb, all to build this one unified French identity.
Now, as you can imagine, this radical new idea of the nation wasn't exactly welcomed with open arms by the old guard. It basically kicked off a massive, century-long tug-of-war for the soul of Europe between the forces of change and the defenders of the old way.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly. You basically had two teams. On one side, you have the liberal nationalists who wanted constitutions, freedom, and national unity. And on the other, you have the conservative order, the kings, the nobles, the church, who are fighting tooth and nail to hang on to tradition and their own power.
So after Napoleon is finally defeated in 1815, the big conservative powers all get together for the Congress of Vienna. Their leader, this Austrian guy Duke Metternich, had one simple goal: hit the rewind button. They put the old monarchies back on their thrones and set up a system designed to crush any new nationalist or revolutionary ideas.
But here's the thing. You can't just kill an idea. Metternich saw guys like the Italian revolutionary Giuseppe Mazzini as public enemy number one. Mazzini was out there creating secret societies like Young Italy, arguing that nations were natural, even God-given. He was this relentless voice in the shadows, keeping that dream of a unified Republican Italy alive when it seemed impossible.
And look, the battle wasn't just fought with guns and secret societies. It was also fought with art and culture. This was romantic nationalism. The idea was that a nation's true soul, its Volksgeist, wasn't in the royal courts, but in the stories and songs of the common people. Think about the Brothers Grimm, collecting fairy tales to try and define what it meant to be German, or the Polish composer Chopin, using folk dances in his music as a kind of cultural protest against Russian rule.
But here's the hard truth. Culture and secret societies can only take you so far. Building a national spirit is one thing, building an actual national state is a whole different ballgame. The dream of a popular revolution often just got crushed by the sheer might of empires. So that beautiful dream of unity, it would end up being built not with songs, but with state power, war, and a brutal policy of blood and iron.
And the undisputed master of this new, ruthless game was Otto von Bismarck of Prussia. He famously said that the big questions of the day wouldn't be solved by speeches and debates, but by blood and iron. He was a pragmatist. He saw that all the talking by the liberals wasn't working, so he created a brilliant three-step playbook of calculated wars to just knock out his rivals one by one and use the might of the Prussian army to force the German Empire into existence.
Italy's story, well, it was a little more of a team effort, as you can see here. It took three key players. You had Mazzini, the soul, who gave them the dream. Then you had Count Cavour, the brain, a masterful diplomat who cleverly maneuvered to get Austria out of the north. And finally, you had Giuseppe Garibaldi, the sword, a total rock star general who led his volunteer army, the Red Shirts, to free the South. It was the combination of soul, brains, and muscle that finally made Italy a reality.
So, there you have it. The dream of a unified Germany and a unified Italy is finally a reality. But, and this is a huge but, this victory wasn't the simple, happy ending that Soryu had painted. Nationalism was quickly proving to be a very, very sharp double-edged sword.
So how do you get millions of people to rally around this big, abstract idea of the nation? Well, you give it a face. Artists created these powerful female figures to represent the nation. In France, she was Marianne, a symbol of liberty. In Germany, she was Germania, wearing a crown of oak leaves for heroism and holding a sword for strength. These images made the nation feel real, personal, and definitely something worth fighting for.
But by the end of the 19th century, something started to go wrong. That national pride began to turn sour. The spirit of fraternity from Soryu's dream was replaced by this intense, ugly rivalry. It became all about my nation is better than your nation. And that aggressive nationalism quickly fused with imperialism, as all the big powers started scrambling for colonies and global dominance.
And nowhere was this more dangerous than in the Balkans. The whole region was this incredibly complex mix of different ethnic groups, all stuck inside the dying Ottoman Empire. So you had Slavic groups demanding their own nations, and at the same time you had the big European powers, like Russia and Austria-Hungary, meddling and trying to grab territory for themselves. It turned the whole region into a powder keg, just waiting for a spark. And in 1914, that spark would ignite the First World War.
So when you look back, nationalism left this really complicated legacy. It's a classic double-edged sword. On the one hand, you have the promise, democracy, people having a say in their government, and freedom from old empires. But on the other hand, you have the peril, intolerance, brutal competition, and in the end, a completely catastrophic war.
Which brings us all the way back to where we started, with Soryu's beautiful dream of peaceful United Nations. The whole story of the 19th century shows us that one single idea can hold both the absolute best of what we hope for and the absolute worst of what we're capable of. So the question we're left with is, was nationalism the dream, the nightmare, or was it somehow, impossibly, both at the very same time?